In this video, I'm going to go over a couple of questions that have recently been asked, and I'm also going to go start to finish on a design all the way through in one video. So hopefully I'll be able to get that done timely and things will go just fine. I will try to also slow down my cursor movements and speak loud enough. Some people have asked for that in my videos, so let me know if this is not an improvement over previous videos. But for this one anyway, we're going to start with our shape builder. So we'll just start from scratch, and when you do the shape builder, you choose your shape style first, and then you choose all your options over here next before you do anything else. If you change your settings or your sizes first, it'll end up messing up if you go back to switch your shape style. So we'll go ahead and do this, and on this particular one I'm going to not have a margin. I can go ahead and throw in flower vases here if I want to, but I'm actually not going to in this particular instance because I'm going to bring in some turned ones later. So we'll just go with a 36 by 24, or possibly, let's make it a little bit bigger. Let's go 42 by 24 with a 60-inch base, and maybe we'll even go 8 inches thick on that. So we'll just make it a little bit bigger. So we changed our settings, and I just hit tab while I was going through the different sections. I clicked and swiped and typed in on my keyboard. You can also use the up and down arrows. Those go in 1/8 inch increments for most of these settings. Over on the vases it goes in 1 inch increments. So I'll just go ahead and click OK, and that will create our stone for us. It centers it on 0 here, and then it builds it where 0 is also here. So if you are one that likes to use XY coordinates, you can see if I click on the die, it's going to show that it's at 0, 12. And that's because it's actually going off of the center of that. So this center mark is 0, 12. You can also check on here. You'll notice that it's 0, 0, or if I come up here, you'll see that it's 0, 24. So depending on what you have selected as your object origin, that'll give you the coordinate that you're looking for. I don't typically use coordinates though, so I'm not going to do that myself. Usually when I come in and start doing text, and I'm going to make a change real quick. I just recently upgraded to CorelDRAW 2018, so a lot of my settings are not finalized and set up yet. So right now it's showing point size. I don't want to show point size, so I'm going to go to customize my options, go to text, change my default text to inches instead, and click OK. That way it's going to show up as inches there instead of points. So when I click here and type in a name, normally what I do is I'll just hit enter to go to the next line, and then I'll type in the the date here, and then I'll hit enter again, type in the next date, and then I've got all 3 lines that I want. I'll normally then go up to my pick tool because I'm done with the text typing, and I will hit Control K, which breaks that apart, breaks those 3 lines apart, and then makes it so that this top line is the one that's highlighted. So then I hit Control and 8 on my numeric keypad, and what that does is it makes the text go up in 1/4 inch increments. So you can see up here where it says 1 1/4. If I were to do that again, now it's 1 1/2, 1 3/4. If I'm holding down Control and hitting 2 on a numeric keypad, it will go down by 1/4 inch increments. So normally that's how I do it, just because I think it's faster. I then click and swipe around all of those dates, and usually I'll hit C on the keyboard just to make sure that they're centered, even though they should be. So I'll hit C to make sure they're centered, and then I'll come over and choose my panel style that I want to have. So if I wanted a double line panel, I would just hit apply, and it would then build that panel around the text for me. It spaces based off of this text spacing, so it's giving me 1/2 inch spacing top to bottom, and then it's giving me left to right spacing based on the height of this tallest line, which is 1.25 inches, so it's giving me 1.25 inches spacing there. I do a lot of clicking out here in the white, and that's just to clear my selection. Typically I do that just because I like to be able to see things without the bounding box or the handles on them. So I prefer to just click out here every once in a while to clear my selection. But then when I want to reselect it, I'll just click and drag a marquee box. Anything that goes completely inside that box gets selected, and then I'll just hit M on the keyboard to mirror, and what it will do is it will mirror then to the other side. Then I can grab my text tool, come back in here and click anywhere in that line, and you'll see the cursor goes wherever I click, and I'll normally hit Control A on the keyboard, which selects all, and then I'll just start typing in the next name. Same thing for this line, click inside there, hit Control A to select all, then type in July 10th, 1804, click in there, hit Control A, April 30th, 1879. Okay, so we've got all of our dates and name and dates typed in there. We're pushing it a little bit with how close this is, especially since we're doing scalloped corners. So I may want to make my panels a little bit larger. If I wanted to do that, depending on my mood, I guess, a lot of times I'll just go ahead and select those panels and switch them to a frost line, and usually not scallop the corners, and then just hit apply, so that'll change them both at the same time. Not that it matters, because we'll end up duplicating it, but if we've got this one here, if we click on it, the side handles, as you click and drag, it will make that side handle grow. I'm going to hit Control Z to undo. But if we wanted to click and drag, if we hold Shift while we click and drag, it will actually go in both directions at the same time. And then I'll let go of my mouse button first, and then I will let go of the Shift button. That way it stays going in both directions at the same time. I can also come up here if I wanted to give it a specific number like 14 inches, type that in and just hit enter, and it would then apply it to 14 inches. So this one over here I'm going to delete because I don't need it anymore, as I'm going to use this larger one now. So I'll click on that, come back over to Scallop Corners, double line, hit apply, and that rebuilt it for me. And then I'll just hit M again, and that will mirror it back over to the other side for me. Now you notice this is a little bit further, or a little bit too close to the edge now. We may want more room in between. We'll mess with that a little bit here after I type in some more information though, as I want to put a marriage date in as well. So I'll just come in here and click and type in married January 18th, 1827. And we'll just throw that down here. If I wanted to center this on the stone, I would usually hold Shift, click on the stone, let go of Shift, and then hit C on the keyboard, and that will then center to that target. If I wanted to center between the top and bottom of my panel, I would usually click on the text, come up here to my quick distribute, and then I would click, and I'll zoom in with my mouse wheel here. I'll click right here on that edge and click right here on that edge, and then it will move the text up on center there. I'll zoom back to all by hitting F4 on the keyboard. Now since I've already got text, I'll normally just click and drag, and while I click and drag I will right click, which gives me the plus sign. If I don't right click, you'll see that it's actually taking the Emma from here and moving it up. If I click and if I right click, you'll see that it adds that back there because I'm actually making a copy of it now. So I'll release my left mouse button to make my copy, and I had released my right mouse button as well. And then I can take this text. I always hit Control A just because I think it's faster, but you can click and swipe as well, and then just type in the last name that way. Going back to my pick tool, I will come up here to my text size and type in the size that I want, maybe 3 inches. Once again, I want to center it to my stone, so I'll Shift select and then hit C, and that will center it on my stone. we'll go ahead and bring in some clip art, maybe some wedding rings for the marriage date. So this I'm going to show a use for the tray. If there's something that you use over and over and over again, that's a good use for the tray, is just to save things that you use a lot in here. So I've got some rings that I use a lot, so I'll just click and drag that over. And then I don't need to have the tray open anymore, so I will go ahead and shrink that back down. Alright, so my rings, I don't know if I want them between the panel or if I want them just up here. So I'm going to actually bring them up a little bit. I'm holding Control while I do that, and that's so that they stay in line with how they were before. I don't remember centering it though, so I might want to shift click the stone again and hit C. And I guess it was centered anyway, so that's good. For those of you that want to, there are things called alignment guides or dynamic guides, which some people like. The alignment guides, if I have those turned on and I click and drag it around, it's kind of hard to see on here, but you'll see that there's white lines, right? And those white lines are aligning with something else. So you can see how it's aligning with different parts of the Smith text, or in this instance, if I move it to here, it's actually aligning with the center of the stone and those panels as well. So alignment guides are actually pretty neat. As I dragged this up, you can see that it's actually giving me an alignment guide that shows that that is now the same distance above the panel as that text is below the panel, which is actually really cool. So there's those different types of options if you want to use alignment guides. Dynamic guides are more like the guidelines, I think. And so you can see as I bring this up, it's created a guide, like a 45-degree angle guide, so that I can drag it across that guide. Maybe I'll turn off alignment guides so you can see the difference. Alright, so you can see there's one right there. It's lining up. It's just throwing on a quick guide to show the edge of that, the top of that text, actually, I think is what it's finding. Or like here, it's going to find the top of the panel. As I drag it down, it'll find the bottom of the panel. Probably. Anyway, just to show you that alignment guides and dynamic guides are an option. Okay, so this text obviously is not the right text, and it's currently a group. I know it's a group because up here on the property bar it shows ungroup objects or ungroup all objects. So if I ungroup all my objects and click off to clear my selection first, then I can click back on here and it will let me select just the black or just the frosted part. So I want just the black. In this particular design, it came from another program, and so this text is not text. So to delete it, I will use my shape tool, and I'll just click and swipe across those and hit delete, and click and swipe across those and hit delete. And that way it's going to get rid of that text for me, as I don't really need that. Alright, I think I'll build a panel around this text as well, so we'll go ahead and just do the same double line and just hit apply, and that will build my panels up there as well. So for up in the corners, I'm going to bring in some artwork a little bit differently. I'll go to open by number, and I happen to know the design number that I want is 5270, so I will type in 5270, and I'm hitting import so that it comes into my current document instead of opening the file itself. and I'll hit import so that it brings it in, and I can just click and drag it up into this corner up here. Once again, if I want to align it to something, I can. If I want to align it to line up with this panel, I can shift select the panel and hit E on the keyboard, and that will center it top to bottom. If I wanted to go left to right to in between the edge of the stone and the panel, I'd select it, grab my quick distribute, and then I'd click over here on the left extent and then over here on the right, and it would make sure that it's centered in between those two clicks there. It's actually a little bit small, I think, so I will make it a little bit bigger. You can either grab a handle if you want to. If you click a handle, once again, you can hold shift and it will now grow from the center instead of up to the corner. And then when I let go, it'll stay there on center. Or you can change the percentages up here. You can also lock your ratio, so if you change one side, let's say to 120, and then I hit tab twice, or if I hit enter, it will go ahead and do both of those the same number for me. So it's locking whatever my ratio is and keeping it the same. So I've got that up there in the upper left. Now in the upper right, I'm not quite sure what I want, so I will go to this button up here, which opens up the Connect Docker. It's a little bit different in 2018 because they pulled it back out of the Get More Docker. In 2017 it was nested in Get More, so you might see a couple more things up here in 2017. But in 2018, I'm glad that they pulled it back out. So I've got favorite folders already set up. If you don't have favorites set up, I would suggest that you do. You go and find whatever folders here that you want, and then you can just click and drag them up, and that will put them up into your favorites. I want to search through my Memorial Designer folder because that's where my clip art exists. This is showing the folders. As soon as I click on a folder, it then switches the view, kind of slides this thing over. If I click on that slider, it will then send it back over and I can choose a different folder. So you kind of see how that works. But the classic collection anyway, I'm going to search through that. And I can double click on it if I want and just go through and find different things. So I could say designs, double click there, and scroll down until I get to floral, double click on that, and maybe using my mouse wheel scroll down until I get to roses and find some sort of rose in here that I like. So I could do it that way. You can also change your zoom on this as to how big and small your icons are. If I were designing this with somebody while they are watching, I may click and drag this out a little bit, and that gives us then just more room for designs that they can go ahead and look at. It also gives you the option up here to do a search. So I'm going to back up just a little bit and go back until we get back to the classic collection. And now that I'm in that folder, I will type in rose and hit enter, and it will go and find any design that's got a rose in it. So there's different ways of getting to your artwork there. This is only searching through the classic collection of designs because I, at the beginning, had only clicked on that Memorial Designer folder and then went to the classic collection. You'll notice nothing has checkboxes here, and that's the only one that's got a checkbox or a star there. If I wanted to search more, I could certainly go up even higher, or I could go, instead of to that, I could just say this PC and click on that. But by doing that, it's going to search everything on my hard drive, on my external hard drives, anything. So it's actually going to take a lot longer to do the search that way. So normally I will go ahead and start at a specific place where I know that my artwork is. And that's why I started there in this folder. So you can see the green thing going across, showing all the different things. I've got 265 results now. And I can just keep on scrolling through and getting lots and lots of different results. But anyway, so we'll go back to our Memorial Designer folder, back to Classic Collection, and I'll just go ahead and type in rose again and hit enter. And I'm going to shrink this back down because I don't want it to be that big anymore. I'll just move my cursor or my mouse over until I get to those arrows, click and drag to the right until it can't drag any further, and then I'll let go. Alright, so with these roses, and I'll go a little bit larger on these. Oh, it's still searching everything because I didn't uncheck that. My PC, so we'll come back here and uncheck this. I don't want it to be searching everything just because it takes longer. So we'll uncheck that. Alright, so let's find a nice rose design. I'll just drag and drop this one over there. You can flip it up here with the mirror horizontally. That's just a standard Corel feature. Once again, I'll use my quick distribute to go left to right, and shift select this and hit E on the keyboard. I let go of shift when I do that, so that it will then center top to bottom. I think with these rings, I'm going to make them a little bit smaller because I want to put some more text. So what I'll do is I've got the one piece which is the frost selected. I just move that off so that you can see it. But I will shift select the other piece as well and combine them together. And then I'll drag it down here. Holding shift, I am dragging inward so that it makes it a little bit smaller. And that way those rings now fit in between those lines, in between those panels. And then what I want to do is I want to make sure that those are 0.09 inches again, since I shrunk it down. So I'll take a freehand tool and I'll click up here. I've got snapping set also, snap to objects. So if you don't have snapping, you won't be able to see where it says edge. Click there, then I'll click back down here. Click on my pick tool, shift select the part that I had combined, and then run blastable, which is this one here. And blastable will then resize that to make sure it's 0.09 inches. What it doesn't do is know that those rings ought to show through to the polish. So I'll come up here to knockout, and then I'll click here. Now it throws up this error, and that's because I've got groups in my design. So if you get this error, that's okay. Just click OK and then go back to knockout and do it again. What it ended up doing was ungrouping things for us. That's a bug that I'm working on fixing, but right now you just go ahead and run it twice if you've got groups. So when you're done, you have to hit escape on the keyboard, and that will then finish our knockout for us. Now since this is in the middle, it's kind of hard to grab. We could come from down here and up this way, which isn't too bad, but if there were stuff here that we didn't want to grab, it might make more sense to hit V to go to wireframe, and then I can click and drag from here. If I didn't go to wireframe and I clicked and dragged, it would actually end up trying to move the stone, so we don't want to do that. Anything that's filled, when you click on it anywhere on that filled area, it ends up selecting it and moving it, so that's not what we want to do. So I'll hit V, click and drag, hit V again, and then shift select the panel and hit E, and that will then center it top to bottom. So that doesn't look too bad. This text, I kind of liked before how the alignment guides told me when I was equidistant from the top and bottom, so I'm going to see if that works again. I will click and drag, and while I do that, I'm going to right click to get a plus sign, and now it looks like if I dragged right about there, that's going to be the same distance both ways. So we'll put married there, and this one we're going to change. We're going to say sealed 28th, 1843. So that way we've got both of those important dates on there for them. And I think this stuff is crowding a little bit too far to the top, so I will just click and drag around all that top stuff and bring it down a little bit. If you just hit the nudge arrow, it's going by 1/4 of an inch increment every time I click on it. If you hit shift while you do that, it will do twice that amount, so 1/2 an inch. And if you do control while you nudge, it will do half of that, which is 1/8 of an inch. So that's usually why I put my nudge distance at 1/4 of an inch, so that I can do those three pretty easily. I also moved the nudge. Normally, if I click off here, the nudge is actually set right here when you have nothing selected. But I moved it onto the top bar here because a lot of times when I have something selected, I want to do a custom nudge. So let's just say I want to go up by 2 inches. I'll move it, I'll swipe it, hit 2, and then I'll push up. So that's kind of why I moved it up there, is so that I've got quick access to being able to do that. Okay, so I think things are looking pretty good here. We're going to go with a darker stone, so on the text I'm going to click and shift select both of these and turn that to white instead of black, as it's going to be polished on a dark stone, I think. And I talked about vases before. I didn't do vases because I want to go ahead and bring in this flower vase. When I click on that, it brings it in. I've actually been playing around with this vase a little bit, so I'm going to hit control and drag it over here so that it's over where I want it to be. But if we look in the object manager, you'll see it's a group, and I've actually got two different ones here. So I've got a turned and an inverted taper. So I've been playing around with the idea of having hidden ones along with the ones that I've got. So that way, if I wanted instead to be inverted taper instead of turned, I can right click on this and say hide, and I can right click on the tapered one and say show, and it's going to be in the exact same spot as the other one. So I think it's a good idea, but I'll play around with it a little bit to see if I really like it or not. On this one, I will now mirror it to the other side. If I just hit M, it doesn't know what to mirror off of because there's nothing behind it, so it's asking, and I'll just click on the die and it will then mirror to the other side of the die. Okay, so what else should we do? If we want to add in flowers rather quickly, we can. Just click there. It brings in the flowers behind everything else, so you have to make sure if you want to drag them, you click on that X in the middle so that you can drag them to where you want them to be. And I want to mirror then to the other side of the stone. If I just hit M right now, it might mirror on my vase because it might find the vase. So I will hold Control and click on the mirror button, and now it's waiting for me to click on a target. So then I'll click on my stone and it will mirror then to the other side of the stone. And then if I wanted to throw in my background, I can go ahead and do that. This background isn't quite wide enough, so I'll click and drag, and while I do that, hold Shift so that it goes in both directions at the same time. Hit F4 to zoom to all, and then I can grab all the things that I want to fill in with a granite color. Click on this and go down to my granite color, and I want to go with Dakota Mahogany for this one. Now it's throwing an error here, and that's because of my hidden objects. So you probably won't get that error because you don't have the hidden vases, but because I do, it's throwing that error. So that's kind of why that happened there. And I will have to play around with that, with the granite fills, to get it to work, or get it to ignore hidden objects anyway. Or maybe unhide them and then rehide them. Okay, so we've got this stone now completed, pretty much the way I want. If I wanted to send this off to somebody via email, normally I'd come up here to JPEG. Actually, first what I would do is I'd save the file. So I'd say File, Save As, and then I would choose a place to save it to. I'll just go ahead and save it to, I'll just put it on my desktop. So I'll put it on my desktop, and normally I say Smith, comma, Joseph and Emma, something like that. I'll give it tags if I need to so that I can find it later, but I didn't really build anything new, so I'm not going to tag it. I'll just go ahead and click Save. On this temple drawing that was in the corner, if you don't have 5270, which you probably don't, it will say, do you want to, actually let me just do it really quick and you'll see what happens. So if I got rid of 5270 in my files and I click on Open by Number and type in 5270 and say Import, if it doesn't find it, it'll say we can't find Design 5270 on your computer. Would you like to try and download it? You just say yes, and then it will go and download it for you. So in case you don't have it, you can just type it in and say yes, and it will go and download it for you. But since I already had it, it had brought it in. I think that's probably all we're going to do on this. Other than now that we've saved it, we can hit the JPEG button and we'll say yes, we want to export all objects. And that way it will go to our proofs folder. So if I pull that up in my documents /MemorialDESIGNER/proofs, we now have our proof. If I double click on it, we can see how that looks. So I think it looks pretty good there. So a question was asked about dimension lines and being able to show this to a customer, show how big things are, or maybe send it off to a manufacturer. So I'm going to show really quick how to do some dimension lines. And I've shown in a previous video dimension lines, but I thought we'd go over a couple more things here. So for the overall size of the stone, I want to use the horizontal or vertical dimension, and that way it's going to be a straight dimension. And I can go from this edge, even the node, which is the very top, click and drag down to here, and then drag it over, and then that will give me a dimension line. I'm going to go ahead and delete our background just to make it so that we can see these a little bit better. And you can see right here's actually the text, but it's pretty small. So if I wanted to change my default style for any of this stuff, what you can do is go to Window, Dockers, Object Styles, and then there's the default object properties here. If we click that, it shows the different options that we've got. We want to change the dimension defaults. So for the text size, maybe we want it to be 1 inch, and I'll just hit enter. For the outline, instead of a hairline, maybe we want it a little bit thicker, so maybe like, I don't know, 0.2 inches, something like that. And if we click on it, you can actually say apply to selected here. That way it'll change it on the fly so that you can see if that's really what you want it to do. So maybe I'll go even a little thicker, 0.125, apply to selected. So you'll see how it's making that larger. And on the text size, maybe I'll even go, 2 inches or something and hit apply to selected. So you can see how it changes there. If I want this to be my new default all the time, I would come up here to this button and say set as new document default. Or sorry, I'd do the next one over. No, that was right. Yeah, set as new document default. Set the selected object properties as the default for new documents. Yep, that's what I want to do. So now every time I click a new document, that's going to be my default. So that's my left, or my top to bottom. If I wanted to do left to right, I'll just click here, drag over to here, let go, and then drag up and click again, and that will give me that dimension there. Same thing for the base. Click and drag, let go, drag over, click. Click and drag, let go, click. So it's giving me all those dimensions there. But somebody else had asked about maybe showing the size of the text here. So we can do that as well. If we wanted to, we could take our dimension tool and go from here to here and drag way over this way. But that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? Because you can't really see that very well. So we'd come up to this, and under text position we want to do force text horizontal, and we might even change the style of the line here from that style to maybe just right click and get rid of it altogether, so that it doesn't even have a line. That way it doesn't get too complicated. So we can do the same thing for each of these lines. We'll just come in here and click and drag up to here. Come on over and switch to horizontal. And actually I think what we could do, I'll just go ahead and do a couple of them at a time. So I hit Control Z to undo. So I'm going to go ahead and do all of these up front first, and go from there to there. Alright, so I'll do those first, and then I'll click and drag all of them around all of them, or sorry. Holding down Shift, I'm clicking on all of them. No, that's not right. Guess it doesn't want to let me do multiple ones. Oh well. I'm going to force it horizontal. Force it horizontally. Force it horizontally. I should be able to grab all those and just hit C on the keyboard to center them. And Shift select all of these, and then right click to get rid of the lines for me. The 1.02, I was off a little bit, so we could change this decimal to just a 0, and that will just say 1 inch. Something like that. And then the same thing with this one. We'll come in here and grab our dimension tool, go from there to there, and go across. Clicking on that, I can drag it over this way, switch it back to force it horizontally, go back to just 1 inch, and right click to get rid of my outline. With the Smith text, do the same thing. Just click and drag up to this one. Drag across. Force it the other way. Right click to get rid of my line. Select all of them, hit C on the keyboard. That will center them all on each other so that they're nice and even. So now we've got those showing the lines. I guess we could, if we wanted to, keep those lines, the dimension lines, these ones, just make them a little bit more subtle. So, we could right click on black and just give it a really small hairline, but I don't know, I kind of like it without. So now we've got dimensions on everything there. One thing though, if you do a plot page with dimensions, it will currently break and crash, so don't do that. Don't use the plot page with dimensions on your thing. We need to fix that. You'd have to come up and either convert these to curves or break them all apart first before you do that, or get rid of them. Another thing that you can do is in the Object Manager, so you've got all of our dimensions here, all of those dimension lines, and I just held Shift to select from the top to bottom, so I went from this one to this one, holding Shift, and that selects all of them. What we could do is we could create a new layer down here and just type in dimensions. And so we can take all of these layers, or all of these dimensions, and drag them onto our dimension layer so that we can hide them, or we can make them not printable, or whatever we wanted to do. That way when it came to creating our plot page, we could just select this part and hit plot page, and it would do it correctly, as opposed to finding those dimensions. So I can unhide the dimensions and they will still be there, back on the original. So that's one use of creating multiple layers, is being able to do stuff like that rather easily. But there we go. I think we've got our design all done up from start to finish, and if you have any questions on anything, just let me know. There are a couple other things that I wanted to show here. So first, with the dimension tool, I'm going to use a different dimension tool, the parallel dimension tool. So if it actually sounds pretty funny, parallel dimensions. Anyway, so if I zoom in here, a lot of times I will use a freehand line in order to measure something, but the parallel dimension, or even any of the dimension tools, will actually let you click. Oops, it's locked. Sorry about that. We'll stay on our dimensions layer though. Okay, so we'll click and drag, and as we do that, it actually gives us the size. So you can see it's 0.09 inches there. I can also go at a different angle, and you can see how my size grows there. But from there to there, it's actually 0.09 inches, and it's perpendicular from where I started. If I want to not make a dimension line, I just hit Escape while I'm having my mouse down, and that will then clear that out. So I could actually check from here to here, and it would tell me that it's 0.16 inches, which is pretty cool. And then just hit Escape, and it won't create the dimension line. So that's a quick way of measuring something. Same thing, if I wanted to measure from here over to here, I can see that that's 2 and almost 1/4 inches. So quick way of finding distances. If I wanted to know how much room there was from the top of my die down to my panel, you can see that it's giving me that dimension there of 4.81. So that's another use for that. Something also that we can do, and I'm going to hide our dimensions again. I want to go up to Edit, say Select All, and say Text, and that way it selects all of this text here. I want to change all of our text at the same time. If we were to just grab our text here, this box may actually end up going over the top of our design, which is not really something that I wanted to do. So it can be handy for you to come up to Text up here and say Text Properties, which opens up the Text Properties Docker. So that way you can get to a drop down that's over here on the side and won't mess with all of your stuff. I've also got a lot of fonts on my system, 738 of them. So if I want to filter, I can filter by the different kinds of fonts that I have. I've got different collections for the different programs that I've got, and I can just click on those, and that will give me then all of my monument fonts. So I've got 109 that are monument specific, but that then gives me a shorter list to go through. The neat thing though is that as I come over here and select one, it will actually give me a live preview on the stone. So if I wanted to, while my customer was watching, quickly go from one font to the next, they'd be able to see that. The Monument Lettering Center fonts, you'll notice they've actually got upper and lowercase letters. Oops, where did that go? Here we go. So they've got upper and lowercase letters, so all of my other letters ended up becoming smaller here. I've just started using the Monument Lettering Center fonts, which I really like them, but that's a little bit different from my MD fonts, in that in my fonts my upper and lowercase are the same, where the MLC fonts actually have different letters for the small caps. So if I wanted to change all of these kind of at the same time, I would have to come in here, click on this and come over to my shape tool and drag around it and then hit this AB button to go to all caps. So what I want to show you here is how you can actually create or move things around, create a custom workspace in order to create buttons for you that you might need to use. So this AB button, if I actually hold Alt and click on it, so I'm clicking and dragging while holding Alt, and that's dragging it then off of that toolbar. I don't want to drag it off, I want to make a copy, so I'm going to hold Control and Alt at the same time and just drag out here anywhere and let go of my mouse button, and that then creates a brand new toolbar for me with that tool. So any tool that you want to add to that toolbar, you can really easily. You just click on it and holding Alt and Control, click and drag and throw it either in front of or behind that one. So just to show you how that works, and I can click and drag this to move it that way. But anyway, so now if I went back to Edit and said Select All Text, now I can just hit this AB button and it would actually automatically change everything to all caps. And if I clicked on it again, it would then put it back to how it was before. So that button might actually come in handy. I might throw it up onto my Memorial Designer toolbar, or I might throw it up onto this toolbar, or I might just leave it as its own. Just to show you that that's something that you can do with the workspaces. If you make any modifications though to your workspace, you would want to go to Tools, Customization, Workspace, and export your workspace as your own instead of the Memorial Designer Pro one, and then you can edit yours instead of the default one. But that's totally up to you. So I'll just go ahead and click cancel there. But I just wanted to show you that really quickly, how you can create your own buttons or move buttons around in order to get the workspace the way that you want it to be.